Hello, this is old Mr. Kent of MrKent.com. And if you've been following my channel very much, you know that recently my son purchased this property out here just outside of town in the crowded housing areas. And then shortly after he moved out here, he invited my wife and I to eventually sell our house in town and move into a fifth wheel that you see there, and live with him in our old age. So anyway, that's we're in the process of doing that. And the guy straight out up ahead at the top of the screen, he's a contractor, and he recommended Noel Rarimez, who you see down there. He's making measurements for a extra room that my son is going to add on to his shop for storage and kind of like hobby work. The fifth wheel doesn't have a whole lot of square footage, and so like for instance, my wife, she likes to quilt, and there's no place for her sewing machine really. And so in that little room, which is going to be about 15 feet out from the shop, she'll be able to set up her sewing machine, and then I'll be able to do my hobby stuff, which generally is just making videos for YouTube with my drones. And so you can see that they're setting up here and getting everything ready to pour a concrete slab. Excuse me. And then also my son wanted a concrete slab poured in front of his shop, about a 20 by 20 foot concrete slab. So there's Noel. I filmed this with my phone, but he's breaking up the old concrete so they can put new concrete in there. So we got it all prepared, and then the day came to pour the concrete. And of course, pouring the concrete for the slab, that's the first step. And when I thought of that, I thought of back in 1969 when the United States landed a man on the moon, and John Glenn, as he stepped off of the staircase going up to the module, he said, "One small step for man, one giant step for mankind." And it really was. And so over the period of the next 10 years, during the 70s, NASA sent several men to the moon and back, and it had a lot of coverage on television and everything, and that was one of the prime interests of everybody back in that time. Now, back in that time, I also was a school teacher in a high school, and I was teaching metal shop, drafting, and electronics. And in my electronics class on Fridays, about once a month, I would order a film and show them something that had to do with electronics. And back then, there was no internet, there was no computers at home, and no YouTube. And so if you wanted to show a film in your class, you ordered the film from whoever had it available, roll the projector down to your classroom and set up a screen, put the film on the projector in the back of the room, and then you showed the film. It wasn't a video, it was a film. And so that's how you did it. Well, during the 70s, with all the hype about sending men to the moon, one of the films that I ordered was what they were doing with the rocks and the moon dust that they brought back from the moon. And so the particular film that I ordered was how they used moon dust as fertilizer. And what they did was they set up what they call, I guess you'd call them terrariums. Anyway, there were about 10 by 20 glass rooms, very large. They set up two of them, and they put the same soil in both of them, and then they started planting, and they planted the same plants in both of them. And so those guys worked hard. I'm telling you, when I watched them work, even though I was running the drone, I could tell. And afterwards, they were all sweaty and stuff, but they worked hard. So anyway, as they ran this experiment, and they the control one, they just put the regular plants and soil, so forth, And then in the experimental one, they put they put the same soil, planted the same plants, but they fertilized it with moon dust that they brought back from the moon. And by the way, when my son saw these guys putting up the protective sheet to keep from splattering concrete on the wall, he was standing next to me and he said, "These guys are professionals." And by the way, Noel, I don't know if I mentioned it, but he has his own business, but he charges much less than the big guys, and so that's why my neighbor recommended him. Anyway, so my son said they're doing a great job. All right, so they had two big terrariums. One had regular soil, and the other one had been fertilized with moon dust. And they planted exactly the same plants in exactly the same spot. And then they started, they let them grow. And the film showed the progress, you know, how they do. And the plants in the control terrarium, they just looked like we normally see them look. And they were, you know, growing in what you would expect. But the plants in the experimental terrarium with the moon dust fertilizer, they grew and grew and grew, and they got bigger and bigger and bigger. And it was unbelievable. And I mean, it really was unbelievable when you saw the size of the plants and how rapidly they grew and how healthy they looked. And so then they thought, oh man, this is something unbelievable. So then the next thing they did in the film was to inject insects into each one. And in the control terrarium, when they put the insects in there, well, the insects did what they normally do, and they just ate the plants and destroyed the growth, and that was pretty much the end of that. But when they put the insects into the terrarium with the moon dust, the insects died, and the plants continued to grow. Now, near the end of the video, at the end of the video, when they were all finished, the head of NASA at that time. Oh, by the way, here they are, and I didn't cover all this, but they went through and they leveled with that, and then wherever there was low, they threw extra concrete in, so it would be getting the same concrete. Oh, and down below there, there's my sweetheart and my grandson and my son, and so I just happened to catch them in the video. Anyway, so at the end of the video, they showed Christopher Kraft, who was at that point in time, he was the head of the NASA, National Aeronautic and Space Administration, and he was sitting at his desk, and he explained, he said, "We have no explanation as to how this happened. It just is, we haven't figured it out and how it happened." And I remember that day I was sitting in the back of the room by the projector as he was saying that, and I had a smile on my face, not a smirk, but a smile, because I knew what happened. And you can check it out yourself. If you go to Genesis chapter 3, where Adam and Eve ate the forbidden fruit, whatever it was, and God, after they had sinned and done that, God said to Eve, he said, "From now on, childbirth will be painful." And he said to Adam, he said, "From now on, eating will be by the sweat of your brow. You will work hard to get the food that you want to eat." And you can Google it. Go to just Google Genesis chapter 3. You can get the right words, because I don't have them right. And while you're at it, Googling things, Google moon dust, and you'll see it was such a hype back then that the moon dust was working for fertilizer, and everybody knew about it. There was such a hype that, manufacturers started calling their fertilizer moon dust. And by the way, since that time, I have tried to get those films or videos or anything that NASA has available, and they never answer my questions. And they never tell me Sorry, we don't have those anymore. I think they got embarrassed and they pulled them down. And for those of us who believe in God, we know the answer. And so they did. I don't think they wanted to admit their ignorance. So anyway, that's the concrete pour. That's my story for this video. I want to thank you for watching. There's my sweetheart, and God bless.